Hello, you're welcome. You're welcome to my channel today. I'm particularly very excited to release this video so that you might benefit again from this channel. I'm Dr. Olayinka Conley. I'm a sociologist. I'm a researcher. I'm a relationship manager. And also I'm a public speaker. And on this channel, I do a number of things. And all these things that I do, you can cluster them into four: sociology, research, relationship, and migration. All this I do as regularly as possible. Meanwhile, if you are not subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Kindly subscribe. You stand to benefit quite a lot. And if you have subscribed, thank you very much. Today, I'm dropping this video on a very fundamental subject in sociology: basic institutions. Basic institutions or social institutions. So basic institutions, or you can also refer to them as social institutions, are very important in sociology. Very important. In fact, there cannot be sociology without understanding these basic institutions. We call them basic because they're so fundamental to understanding society. And they're so fundamental if societies actually will meet their needs. So, because they perform very unique roles, very fundamental roles for society or societies to function effectively from the perspectives of sociology. So, usually basic institutions are taught at under level or first year or second year, depending on the program, within the framework you are running sociology. So, but usually from first year or maximum second year, you must be taught basic institutions or social institutions, because it is even actually through understanding social institutions or basic institutions that you can actually analyze sociologically. So you can't do sociological analysis effectively, whether you are looking at it from macro sociology or micro sociology, without adopting institutional analysis. So, as people relating to society, needs emerge, needs develop. And from the perspective of sociology, we believe that it's through these institutions that society meets their needs. And it's within these institutions that societies are organized. Basic institutions are fundamental structures that sustain society. They are fundamental elements that sustain society. So what are basic institutions or social institutions? They are mechanisms. Social institutions or basic institutions are mechanisms through which societies are organized, through which societies are understood, through which social order is achieved in society. Don't forget, sociology basically want to understand social order, want to achieve social order, want to understand human relationship. I've dropped many videos on this channel on sociology, so you have to watch these videos so that you can also understand what I'm talking about in this particular video. So, social institutions or basic institutions can be described as mechanisms, processes, approaches through which societies meet their needs, basically. That's what they mean. They are all, and from the perspective of sociology, in terms of pure and applied sociology, if you want to do sociological analysis, it's through understanding social institutions or basic institutions that you can understand relationship that exist among people. And it's through your understanding or analysis of social institutions that you can understand human behavior in groups and in context of how they relate in the society. So social institutions are very important for us, or basic institutions are important for us in sociology at the level of explaining human relationship and at the level of understanding human relation, patterns of behavior, social order, social dynamics, social change, or development. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. So it's not possible for societies to meet their needs without their social institutions. And people cannot, we also understand human identity, or we also understand social change in the context of social institutions. I dropped a video also on social change, so you can also watch that video So I've told you why social institutions or basic institutions are so important. I've told you definition of social institutions. And if you want to understand societies in terms of how they change, how they develop, you can also just look at this from the perspective of how their social institutions change, or how their social institutions regulate human behavior. Because from social institutions and human behaviors can be regulated. Because social institutions give reward good behavior practices and can sanction bad behavior or practices. So the next thing for me to tell you is, what are these basic institutions? We call them basic institutions, don't forget, because they are so fundamental in understanding society. So what are these basic institutions? So people have different, you can read many books talking about social institutions in terms of social networks, in terms of some other things. But anything you hear from me on this video, you can take it as a standard sociology or sociological practices. So these basic institutions are basically 5, and I did a video also on socialization processes. I did mention in that video that socialization actually takes place through relationship among these institutions, as you as members of society pass through the social institution to learn the norms and values and ideals of their society. So these basic institutions are 5, basically speaking. Number 1 is marriage and family. Believing that families can be consummated through marriage. So basically, family. Then you can also talk about education. You can also talk about economy. You can also talk about political institution or politics. Then you can also talk about religious institution. These are 5 basic social institutions. And if you want to understand why people behave certain ways, you can look at how they have passed through these institutions, and look at their family. When you begin to say things like charity begins at home, you're already saying that the families of the individual must have influenced the individual. We can also look at how people, the schools they have attended, and you can also look at the degrees they have studied. You can also look at the economy, how they have operated within the economy over time. You can look at their religion. You can look at their political system they have passed through. So these institutions that give people identity. And when sociologists want to understand people, they look at these institutions they have passed through, whether they have internalized the norms and values of these institutions or not. So these are basic institutions. And we talk about networks in sociology. People are dependent on these networks they form within these institutions to get by in life, to become who they are in life, and how they will progress in life. So the networks people build in these institutions, the level of conformity or activation of values in this society or in these institutions in society, can actually give us an insight on how people will turn out in life. So people have intentionally optimized the institutions they pass through. So people have had reasons to depend on the social institutions in a way to be able to achieve their goals, because it is from social institutions that people get their identity, get their roles, get their status, and get their networks, build their behaviors, whether they will become conformist or deviant. So social institutions are not just there. People depend on them. They determine who people become in life ultimately, and they determine who they are and who they might be. So, for example, sociologically, if I look at somebody and how is operating within different social institutions, I can project the behavior of that individual. So, it's very important for you as a sociologist to understand what business institutions are and how they affect people's behavior and how people optimize these social institutions in acting the way they act. So if you want to understand societies effectively, you may need to understand social institutions and basic institutions. in a way that is very significant. Aside these 5 I've mentioned in terms of the family, marriage and family, in terms of education, in terms of religion, economy, and politics, there are based on new realities, developments in society or social change, new institutions are being added. So when you see them in some textbooks or you see them online, don't get confused. We also have now health institutions because of the sick role behavior of people or sick behavior of people or ex-belief model of people. I did a video on medical sociology and I mentioned this because people also have reasons to consult health facilities now, and this affects the way they behave. So this is very important. So we have also added social media or media generally, social media, because social media now is becoming fundamental independent, determining how people behave and in terms of how people regulate human behavior in society. And we also had a peer group because people also lean on their peer groups for different reasons, and peer groups also affect how people behave, generally speaking. So if you had these 3, then you are talking about 8, but 5 fundamentally are very important. So the one thing I want to mention again is the structured element of these social institutions. What are the elements of these social institutions? A basic element is the norms. I'll still do a video on norms. The norms are central to these institutions. What are norms? Norms are informal expected rules of behavior. Expected rules of behavior that are informal. When they are formalized, they become laws. But before they are formalized, we call them norms. Norms evolve as people relate among themselves. So there are norms, rules of behaviors that are not codified in formal way, but they are still very strong. You know, when 2 people relate or a group relate, there are so many things that guide their behaviors or relationship, but they are not written. Norms are unwritten rules that guide human behavior. You also have values. Values are standards of behavior. Standards of behavior, that's what values are. So social institutions have norms and values embedded in them. Another structured elements of social institutions, roles. People have roles that are allocated to them by these social institutions. Whether you are a child, whether you are a husband, whether you are wife, whether you are partners, whether you are employees, whether you are employers, whether you are clergyman, whether no matter errands of religion. Once you have in this institution, you have roles you are expected to play. You have status that you occupy, and this status comes with role and expectation. So depending on how you perform your roles will determine whether you will be rewarded or you will be sanctioned. So when people are sent to prison, when people are saying they are patients in the hospitals, their patients are expected to behave in certain ways. When people go to school, you are expected to behave in certain ways. When you are a teacher, you are expected, or a lecturer, you are expected to behave in certain ways. So, and that means you must obey certain rules, formal and informal. And values are set for you that this is the standard we're expected to. That's why some people may be sacked from their offices because they are not conforming to expected standard. Some are labeled deviants because they don't live up to expected standards in their offices. So structured elements of these social institutions, or basic institutions, you have roles, you have norms, you have values, you have status, you have identity. Identity you are given by in society are based on social institutions, and these identities are codified in social institutions. I did having a nice time. So I hope you are enjoying this. So these are structured elements. And before I go, let me drop this final section, which are called characteristics of basic institutions. Characteristics of basic institutions or social institutions. Number 1, social institutions are stable. They don't just change every day. That's why you say this is an American society. When you see an American, you expect the individual to behave in certain ways. This is a British. When you say British, you expect to behave in certain ways. That's when people speak, you say he's German, you say he's Chinese, because aside the fact that It may be reflective on their identity, the way they also speak, the way they behave. You expect, you say, oh, wow, this is un-American. Or you say, is the president behavior presidential? That means you expect the president to behave in certain ways. You know, I heard that all the time. You say, but you are supposed to be a Christian or a Muslim, or you're supposed to be Hindu, you're supposed to be, a traditional religious person, So that means there's a pattern that social institutions have been created, social institutions have created, and stability is expected. So social institutions don't just change randomly, because they are the structures, they are the pillars of society. So they are stable. If they change so frequently, that means the society will be in a constant state of flux, constantly changing, and the identity will not be stable. So social institutions are stable, and number two, social institutions are dynamic, not contradictory actually. They are stable, but that does not mean they don't change. They do change. They change. Social institutions change. They are dynamic, but they are stable. As they are changing, they change in a stable way. So social institutions are not rigid. That's why I talk about this point. I want to mention is very important. So social institutions or basic institutions are historical and comparative. That is, you can understand social institutions or basic institutions in historical terms. How have they been over time? That's why I talk about 1920s America, 1930s Britain, 1940s China, 1980 Russia, 1990 Singapore. You are looking at how they've been changed. You talk about pre-colonial society, post-colonial society, postmodern society. You're talking about how the institutions have changed and ultimately how societies have changed. So this is very important. So social institutions are historical, at the same time comparative. That's why you can compare social institutions in one society to the other over time, or social institutions with social institution, religious with economy, economy with family, family with political, the political with the economy. So you can compare social institutions within, and you can compare them without, that is, you can compare them across society. Another point is that social institutions are related, they are mutually reinforcing. The social institutions, that's why you can say somebody is born free or is born like a slate, tabula rasa, and you see them from family, they move to economy, they move to education, to economy, to religion, to politics, even to social media, even to health, like that. They all perform complementary roles. So social institutions, they maintain order, they socialize people, and they give people status, they give them roles, they give them identity, they give them stability. These are the roles social institutions perform. They give people identity. Your family will name you, for example, government names you. And they give them status. You can inherit status from your family. The education you are sent to is also very important. It's part of what will determine your status. So social institutions have a function also. Give people roles, give them stability, also regulate human behavior, regulate and reward and sanction. These are roles, and meet the needs of society. These are roles that they perform. They reward, they sanction. So social institutions are stable, they are dynamic, they are historical, they are comparative, they are complementary. Then another characteristic of social institutions, those institutions are basic institutions, are independent of individuals. Social institutions do not depend on individuals, they depend on the group and the moderate behaviors of humans. So social institutions are independent of individuals. They don't depend on what individuals do. Social institutions react to what groups do, though through individuals. So individuals cannot hold social institutions to ransom, but social institutions can hold individuals to ransom. So social institutions, generally speaking, are very strategic. They are very important in understanding human behavior. So that's why you can see the pattern in society, the family, the education, religion, politics, and economy, and all the rest of them work in sync. They work hand in hand. There are handshakes among all of them. So society can be orderly, can meet its needs, and so on. Welcome to the space of basic institutions and social institutions. So you may see a manner of things in the book. So take what I've told you today very seriously as a major content for this, for as you read and as you apply sociology. Even if you want to do applied sociology, this is the way to go. Your analysis can come from your understanding and utilization of basic institutions or social institutions. When you talk about structural analysis of society, or you talk about social analysis or analyzing societies or human behavior, you need to use social institutions or basic institutions to be able to strategically, sociologically analyze people's behavior, whether at macro level or at micro level. All right? Till I see you in the next video. Kindly subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share. Bye for now.